Court of Common Pleas is now back in session. You may be seated. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It was a little more difficult for some of us to get here this morning than others, so I apologize for the delay, but that was the primary basis. I did have some other matters to attend to this morning when I finally arrived, but I understand some of you had some of that backup on the highway to deal with as well, so I'm glad to see each of you here, and we are prepared to proceed and continue this morning. So with that, Ms. Day, you may continue your direct examination of this witness. Thank you. Good morning, officer.
Good morning.
Just a brief reminder, you are still under oath from yesterday, correct?
Correct.
Now, when we ended the day yesterday, we had talked about State's Exhibit 4, correct?
Yes.
And those were the casings that were collected at the scene in the early morning hours of January 1st, 2015.
That's correct.
Now, officer, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 4 for identification. Please look at, 14, thank you. If you could please look at that item and tell me what that appears to be.
This is one evidence container which contains the semi-automatic 9mm Glock, which is a 26.
And how can you identify that particular item?
This item was collected by me at the crime scene.
And when was it marked?
Approximately 0200 hours.
And where was it located in the residence?
This item was located northwest side of the living room near the TV stand, just a few feet from the victim.
All right. And when you are talking about where the TV stand is, I'm going to show you what you previously identified as State's Exhibit 15 as the sketch of Detective Golke. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And just so we get an idea, on State's Exhibit 15, if you could point to the area that you are referring to that particular weapon was found.
It would have been in this area right here.
Okay. So if you're looking from the master bedroom down the hallway against the far wall to the left?
Yes.
Okay. And sir, I'm also going to show you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit 3UU. And can you identify what that is a photo of?
That would be the firearm mentioned.
All right. And does that particular photograph show what has been marked as State's Exhibit 14 and its location?
That's correct.
Now, it appears that there is some type of tag on the weapon.
Correct.
What is that?
That would not be our tag. That would have been Investigator Harry Campbell's tag.
Okay. Now, how was this weapon found? In other words, what was its condition when it was found?
It was found in the slide lock back position. All the rounds had been spent from the firearm.
Okay. When you say slide lock back, obviously we have a photograph here. And can you point out what you mean by the slide lock back?
This would be the slide, and it is not in its upward position, which would rest right there, meaning that all the rounds were expelled from the firearm.
And when the item is in the locked back position, are you able to determine whether or not there's anything in the chamber simply by looking at the item?
Yes, you can see into the chamber.
All right. And when it's in that slide locked back condition in this particular matter, was there any rounds remaining in the chamber?
There was not.
And was that weapon cleared at the scene?
It was cleared prior to being placed into evidence, yes.
Okay. And describe for the jury what clearing a weapon entails.
Clearing a weapon entails, in this case, obviously the slide was already back, so that gives us a viewpoint in advance, if you will. Otherwise, if the slide is not locked back, we then drop the magazine out of the firearm, and whether we set the firearm down or the magazine down, we hand it off, and then we pull the slide back to make sure there's no rounds in the chamber.
Okay, and looking at State's Exhibit 14, if you could open that and look at it for me. And, sir, does that weapon appear to be in the same substantial condition as it was when you collected it on January 1st, 2015?
Yes, it does.
And, officer, it's my understanding that there is another separate item that's been removed from the weapon that is in that container as well?
That would be the magazine that was located with the firearm that evening.
And that particular magazine, where was it located in relation to the weapon?
It's still within the firearm.
Okay, so it was still within the firearm itself?
That's correct.
Okay. And was there any rounds remaining in that magazine?
There was not.
After that particular item was collected, what did you do with it?
It was taken into our possession. It was then transported to the Massillon Police Department where it remained into custody, evidence custody, until it was taken to BCI.
All right. Now, officer, thank you. Now, officer, we're going to move to the area around the body itself, okay?
Okay.
Do you recall what items were collected from around the body?
Around the body, there were several items that were collected. Keys. There was the spent shell casing by the left hip. There was a phone lying in the vicinity. And the majority of those items were returned to the family members.
Now, sir, you had indicated a few items. Now, we already talked about some of the shell casings. That was tagged into evidence, correct?
Correct.
Were the keys tagged into evidence?
They were not.
All right. How were those designated differently?
Some of the personal belongings at the time of the investigation we believed had no evidentiary value, so they were returned. They were logged but returned separately, and a property receipt was given to the family by Detective Golke.
And, sir, as we discussed yesterday, there was a search warrant that was gathered for this particular location, correct?
Correct.
And when a search warrant has been completed, evidence collected, is there any paperwork that's required to be completed in order to finish the search warrant and turn it back into the court?
There's return paperwork that's completed in regards to the warrant itself. It is signed, and the property taken from the location is also documented and returned to the courts.
And, officer, I'm going to show you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 23. Oh, I apologize. Well, you did the whole thing, but officer, can you tell me what State's Exhibit 23 appeared?
Inventory list based on that search warrant and the items that were found at the location of the house.
Particular document.
I completed that document.
And I know, and please tell me if it cannot be read in this particular, I know the writing, the copy is difficult, but can you read what items were noted that were collected in relation to the search warrant?
Would you like all items collected?
If you could, please.
Okay, the first would be the 10 9mm Hornady Luger rounds.
Okay.
One black semi-auto 9mm Glock with magazine.
And is that referring to what we just looked at with State's Exhibit 14?
That's correct.
Okay.
One black wallet with Ohio operator's license, a USAA Visa Platinum, a USAA MasterCard, one can of Skoal, which was located in his pocket, $26.83 in cash, which was located in the right front pocket, one gray iPhone, one set of keys found under the victim's right shoulder area, one Glock 9mm carry case with 10-round magazine with 5 live rounds in it, one Serpo holster, which was located in the bedroom, in the bathroom, and then one box of Hornady critical defense rounds, which was in the southeast garage shelf.
And does that document fairly and accurately depict the items that were collected in relation to the search warrant and the crime scene you were investigating on that particular day?
Yes, it does.
Now, you had also indicated that some items had been deemed to be personal property, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And they were turned over to who?
I can't say who, I just know it was family members.
All right. And do you know whether or not there was any documents created as to which items would have been turned over to a family member that had deemed to be personal property?
Detective Golke would probably be able to answer that better than I would.
All right. Now, sir, you had indicated that also around the body was found a phone.
Correct.
All right. And in relation to the body, where was the phone located?
I'm not sure exactly where the phone was located.
Would a photograph assist you?
Yes.
Let's see if I can find a photograph. While we're doing that, sir, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 27. Let me assist you. You can look at that document. Sorry, at that item and tell me what that appears to be.
It's one evidence container, which contains the phone. It was located at the scene.
And what time was that item collected?
Approximately 0200 hours.
And how can you identify that particular item?
This was collected by me at the crime scene.
And is it documented on that particular item where it was found?
It was on the living room floor south of the body near the hip area.
Okay.
You have a folder that's partially on the screen.
I do, thank you.
So you might want to just...
Thank you, Your Honor. There we go. And, sir, if you could look at that item and tell me whether or not that item appears to be in the substantially same condition as it was when you first collected it on the excuse me, early morning hours of January 1st, 2015.
It is, other than the case was removed.
All right, and what color is the case?
The case is white.
White, okay. And when you refer to a case, could you pull it out and show us what you mean? Okay. And now, is it two colors?
White and silver, along with the phone being a silver color.
All right. Now I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 3O. So does State's Exhibit 3O accurately depict the location of the cell phone that we are talking about with State's Exhibit 27?
Yes, it does.
All right, and if you could point on the photograph where that is. All right, thank you. Now, sir, in some of the photographs, there appeared to be around the body what may have been some type of straw. Is that correct?
Yes,
All right. And did you see that there that particular evening?
I did.
And do you know if that item was collected?
It was not collected.
And do you know if that was an item that had been turned over to any family members?
I do not believe it was.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 3P. Does this particular photograph show where that item is located?
Yes.
Now, thank you. At that time, was there any particular reason why that item was not collected?
Based on the evidence that we had known at the time of the incident, it was not collected, along with a dog toy that was also lying just north of the body. It had no relevance, we believe, to the crime.
And you referred to a dog toy. Was that one of the items that we observed in the photograph we had previously looked at with the firearm?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
I'm going to now show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 5. Tell me what State's Exhibit 5 appears to be.
This is an evidence collection container that contains one copper bullet jacket material that was stuck to the shirt of the left bicep area.
And sir, how can you identify that item?
This was collected by me at the scene.
And when was it marked?
Approximately 200 hours.
And where was it located?
It was located at the left bicep of the victim.
And sir, if you could open up that item, I understand it's small, and look at it carefully and tell me whether or not that item appears to be in substantially the same condition as when it was collected on the early morning hours of January 1st, 2015.
Yes.
And sir, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 3KK. And sir, does this particular document, what does it show?
It shows that piece of fragment around that location of the body.
And could you please circle it as to its location as you see it in the photograph? All right, thank you. Sir, after that item was collected, what occurred to that item?
It was obtained by Detective Golke and myself. It was later transported to the Madison Police Department, where it remained in custody until it went to BCI.
And I believe I forgot to ask you with regards to the cell phone, State's Exhibit 27. What occurred with that phone after it was collected at the residence?
That was also collected by Detective Golke and I, and it was later taken to the Madison Police Department, where it remained in custody, evidence custody.
Now, sir, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit number 6. And tell me what that item appears to be.
This is one evidence envelope container containing one box of 400A critical defense rounds. Those rounds are 9mm, and there was 21 located in the box.
And sir, how can you identify that particular item?
It was located by us at the scene and collected.
And when was it marked?
Approximately 0300 hours.
Okay. And am I correct in that most of the items that we've talked about so far have been collected at 0200 hours?
Yes, that's when the process began of collecting all of them.
Okay. And so this was collected and marked approximately an hour later?
This was later, yes.
And how long total would you say that you were at the scene collecting evidence that particular evening?
Approximately 2.5 hours.
Okay. Now, where was this particular box of ammunition located?
This was in the southeast garage on a shelf.
And after it was collected, what was done with it?
It was taken into possession by Detective Golke and I, and it was later transported to the Madison Police Department, where it remained in custody, evidence custody.
And sir, if you could look at that particular box of ammunition and tell me whether or not it's in substantially the same condition now as when you first saw it.
Yes, it is.
All right, sir, if you could open the box. I believe you stated that there was 26 rounds that were collected?
There's 21.
21, I apologize. Okay.
That is correct.
And was that one of the items that was sent down to the Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation for testing?
It is.
And when it was returned to you from BCI, obviously it had less than 21 in it?
Yes.
Okay. And whatever testing was done or how many items would be used, the criminalists themselves would be in the best position to answer. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
Okay. And sir, I'm going to show you, I believe what we previously looked at was State's Exhibit 3YY. Is this the box of rounds that we have discussed in State's Exhibit? I lost my number. 6.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm now going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 10. Can you please look at State's Exhibit 10 and tell me whether or not you can identify it?
This is the evidence container that was used to collect clothing items from the body at the coroner's office.
And sir, can you tell from the documentation when it was marked?
This was marked on January 2nd of 2015 at 14:10 hours.
And sir, were those items collected from the body while at the scene?
No, they were not.
Okay. Would you have received them at a later date from a different individual?
Yes.
And how would the Massillon Police Department have come into custody of those particular items?
That was at the coroner's office while they were being taken from the subject.
All right, so the Massillon Police Department came in possession of those items on January 2nd, 2015?
Correct.
And if you could open the bag, I believe it's just tape at this point. No. If you could just briefly look inside and tell me what that appears to be.
This would be the jacket. I believe the shoes are at the bottom.
I believe you said shoes.
Shoes are at the bottom, that's correct.
And in looking at the jacket, which jacket are you referring to?
This would be the white jacket.
And whose white jacket does that appear to be?
That would belong to the subject, the victim.
And was that a jacket you had observed when at the scene on Oak Trail?
Yes.
And in looking at that particular jacket, did that jacket appear to be in substantially the same condition as when you initially saw it on Oak Trail?
Yes.
Now, sir, I believe you indicated that that particular bag contains the white jacket and shoes. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, strike that. Now, officer, after you completed at the scene, how involved were you in the follow-up investigation that occurred?
I really was not. I sat in on one interview because at that point I was working on some other cases and then I was assigned back to the road.
Okay. And I believe when you previously testified, you were a patrol officer who was assisting this particular event.
That's correct.
And did you have any involvement in looking or determining whether or not there was any video evidence of the events leading up to what occurred on Oak Trail on December 31st, 2014?
Yes.
And which items did you collect information?
I did not collect any items.
Okay. Who did you contact?
I contacted the owner of Tucker's Tavern in regards to video that may have located the individuals at that business on that night prior to the incident. and also Kendall's Tavern.
All right. And did you come to learn whether or not any items had been turned into the Massillon Police Department with regards to either of those locations?
I did later view video from Tucker's Tavern of the individuals being at the establishment, and then also I was advised by Kendall Tavern that their video system was not currently working.
Now, you had indicated potentially sitting in on an interview.
Yes,
All right. Was that an interview you were conducting?
I was not.
And did you make any decisions with regards to the investigation and either who was spoken to, where the investigation led, or any follow-up?
I did not.
Who would have been responsible for that?
That'd be Detective Golke.
One moment, sir. Sir, when we had previously talked about State's Exhibit 10, and I apologize, it appears, am I correct, that on the exterior of the bag is marked that it contains a blue long sleeve shirt and the white jacket.
Correct.
All right. I believe you had testified that when looking at it, it contains shoes and a white jacket. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What would that indicate to you?
We had 2 bags that were marked on that date, and the bags were marked before the clothing was removed, and then when the clothing was removed, they ended up in flip-flopped in the bags.
And would there have been any type of documentation that would have indicated which items were in which bags?
Not at the time, other than what was on the bags, and that they had been flipped.
And do you know whether or not there would have been any receipt that would have been signed by anyone at the Massillon Police Department that would have documented the items that they received from the coroner's office?
We were actually there at the time, and you would have to ask Detective Golke if there was a receipt that was obtained.
Okay. But you were present at the time that these items were collected?
Yes.
Do you recall whether or not a blue shirt was collected?
Yes.
And you indicated there was 2 separate bags of clothing. That was correct.
That's correct.
Now, you had indicated in discussing the items collected that we have a blue shirt, a white hoodie jacket, correct?
Correct.
Shoes.
Correct.
What other clothing do we have that the deceased was wearing?
The tennis shoes, and I'm not sure if that was it or not.
Any pants?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
I apologize. I thought you mentioned pants. So, yes, he had blue jeans on.
Okay. Any other clothing that you recall?
At the coroner's office, he did have a pair of underwear on as well.
Okay. We have a moment here.
You may.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hiltner, is it you?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Officer Dadisman.
Good morning.
My name is Max Hiltner, and I represent Colleen McKernan, okay?
Yes.
And if at any time you don't understand one of my questions, just please ask me to rephrase, and I will, okay?
Yes.
Now, you've been an officer for how long?
10 years.
Okay. So you've been investigating crimes that whole time, I'm assuming?
Correct.
Okay. And so you know that when you investigate a crime, you want to be thorough?
That's correct.
And then when you arrive on scene, that you always don't know the circumstances of what you're inscribed, right?
Correct.
So you want to preserve all the evidence when you get there, right?
Correct.
Okay. Because the evidence that you preserve at a scene is relied upon by other people, right?
Correct.
Now, it's not your job when you get to a scene to determine guilt or innocence, right?
That's correct.
And that's one of the reasons why you want to preserve all the evidence.
Correct.
Because guilt or innocence is a decision to be later made, right?
Correct.
Now I want to talk about your involvement in this case. You had worked the afternoon shift on New Year's Eve, correct?
That is correct.
I believe you said 2 to 10.
Correct.
So this call came in at what, about midnight or later?
It was before midnight.
Okay. So what did you do after your shift was over? Did you go home?
I live approximately 25 to 30 minutes away, so I had gone home, taken a shower, and less than maybe 15 minutes upon having completed my shower, I was eating something and I was called.
And you got called back into work?
Yes.
Okay. So at that point you were working overtime?
I did go back in for overtime, yes.
Okay. And I think you said you worked an additional, what, 4 hours that night probably?
Approximately.
Okay. Now, you were contacted by several people to assist in this investigation, right?
Correct.
Detective Golke,
Yes.
Sergeant Meyer,
Yes.
and is it Officer Brown?
Yes.
Okay. And those are all people that had contacted you for some help, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you initially did not go to 1753, did you?
I did not.
You went to the Massillon Police Department?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, when you got there, you met up with Detective Golke,
Correct.
and your job was to assist Detective Golke in whatever he needed, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And I think you mentioned specifically preservation of evidence.
Yes.
Now, when you got to the scene, you made some observations on the direct examination, I believe it was yesterday, about the hallway. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. I'm showing you what's been previously marked for identification purposes as Defense Exhibit JJ. Do you recognize this picture?
Yes.
Okay. And you recognize this because this is a picture of the hallway where this incident occurred, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you mentioned that, well, here, I'll just go ahead and put up. And this is in the same, substantially the same condition the hallway is as the night that you observed it?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Walker, can you put up Exhibit JJ? Your Honor, we have permission to
You
call
can
this.
just put it down,
Okay.
and it magically appears right there.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. Can you see that all right, officer?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that nothing seemed out of place in the hallway when you got to the scene, right?
Correct.
Okay. But you'll agree with me that on these walls you don't see any pictures, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Can we approach?
You may. You may, but that objection was sustained. Go ahead.
I think we have the right ones. Now, you recognize this picture, don't you?
Yes.
Okay. And this is a picture that was taken the night of the incident?
Correct.
Okay. And everything that you see here is in substantially the same condition as that night?
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, and Officer Dasman, you had testified that you didn't see any signs of a struggle that night, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the majority of these shell casings were in the hallway, correct?
The majority, yes.
Okay. Now, if we're looking at the walls on what's already previously been marked as State's Exhibit 3D, you'd agree with me that on this near wall to the left, there are no pictures, correct?
All right, Mr. Heltner, I'm just going to interrupt you because I can't see the sticker on that. I don't think you identified for the record. We are looking at the State's
This is State's Exhibit 3D, Your Honor.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Go ahead.
So on State's Exhibit 3D, Officer Dasman, do you see any pictures you agree with me that there are no pictures on the near wall to the left?
Correct.
Okay, and there's no tables in this hallway that you can see?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if we look to the right, this far wall on Exhibit 3D, you agree with me that there are no pictures on that wall, right?
Correct.
And that just appears what would be a thermostat, correct?
Just past the kitchen, well, that is correct, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
And it's your understanding that's affixed to the wall?
Should be.
Okay. So in this hallway, there are no plants, correct?
No.
There's no end tables?
At the end of the hallway, there is.
Okay, but in this specific area of the hallway, no?
No.
Okay. Now, we can also see, in State's Exhibit 3D, we can see a dog gate to the back far right. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, you don't know who put that dog gate there, do you?
I do not.
Okay. And you don't know when it was put there then, right?
I do not.
I believe you testified that you weren't able to determine how fast these shots were fired, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
I don't think there was any, it's sustained. I don't think there's been any testimony about that.
Skip that. And by the time you got on scene, Officer Gaddisman, how many people had been inside this house?
I can't answer that.
Okay. Would it be more than 5? Less than 5?
If I had to say, knowing how many officers work our shift, and being that there was paramedics there, I would say around 5.
Okay. But you don't know the names of everyone who would have been in the house then?
Not exactly, no.
Okay. Now, it's your understanding that when you got to the scene, well, let me ask you this. When you got to the scene, were you informed at all that there was an effort by the defendant to perform CPR on her husband?
I was advised that before arriving at the scene.
Okay. And you talked a lot about shell casings on your direct examination. As far as the placing of the shell casings go, you can't say that Colleen didn't accidentally touch one of those shell casings as she was performing CPR, right?
Correct.
Okay. And a lot of these shell casings are strewn throughout the hallway, right?
Correct.
Okay. So if someone were to walk from where the body was to the front door, they would have passed those shell casings?
No, they would not have.
They would not have passed the shell casings in the hallway?
If they were coming from the hallway, yes. If they were in the living room or closer to the steps, any of the shell casings would have been further away from them.
Well, particularly with regard to the body, there were shell casings near the body, right?
Pardon?
There were shell casings near the body, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And again, you're familiar with CPR. You're probably certified in CPR.
Correct.
Okay. You are aware that involves being near the body. Yes?
Correct.
And touching the body, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, were you aware that there were dogs in this house?
I could hear them, yes.
Okay, you could hear them. Where were they at when you heard them, sir?
They were locked up in the basement area.
Okay. Do you know who locked them in the basement?
I do not.
Do you know when they were locked in the basement area?
Do not.
Do you know how big these dogs were?
I do not know.
Okay.
Sounded bigger.
Okay. Do you know if these dogs were upstairs at any point in time?
I do not know that.
Okay. But you did observe some things upstairs that would be consistent with dogs being up there. Fair to say?
At some point, yes.
You observed a dog toy
Yes.
and a dog cage.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you testified that there was a you testified that there was a white straw next to Mr. McKernan's body, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that was a white straw,
Correct.
right? Okay. And was it a full straw?
No, it was not.
Okay. It appeared to be cut, didn't it?
Yes.
And you stated that you believe that that straw belonged to Mr. McKernan, right?
Objection,
No.
Your Honor.
Sustained. That was not testimony, counsel.
So you've never testified in a proceeding regarding this matter that you believe that that straw belonged to Rob McKernan?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained approach. You can continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Dadisman, did you have an opinion who the straw belonged to at the time?
No, I did not.
Okay.
In the right way.
So have you ever formed an opinion with regard to who this straw belonged to?
Objection.
Asked and answered. Just go ahead with your next question.
Okay. Now let's talk about what a cut straw might mean in your profession, okay?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
So cut
To the extent that he has knowledge, but go ahead.
you've been an officer for 10 years, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you're familiar with drug paraphernalia, is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. And in your line of work, you would most likely consider a cut white straw to be drug paraphernalia.
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Correct.
Okay. So when you observe this cut white straw next to Robert McKernan, regardless of who it belonged to, you believe that that might be drug paraphernalia based on your experience as an officer.
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. It's cross-examination.
Not at the time, based on the evidence that we had. It wasn't what we were looking for.
Okay. Now, you had testified previously on direct examination that that straw was not preserved, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you also mentioned that you guys the department does a search warrant inventory.
Correct.
Okay. And specifically, you did the search warrant inventory in this case, correct?
Correct.
Can I approach the witness?
You may.
Now, you've already looked at this on direct examination, right?
Correct.
Correct. And this is the search warrant inventory that you filled out in this case?
Correct.
My publisher, Your Honor.
Yes.
Now, Officer Desmond, on this search warrant inventory, we can agree that there is evidence, correct?
Correct.
And that there is what you would call personal property.
Correct.
Okay. Now, let's go through these. So, now in Defendant's Exhibit B, you'd agree with me, Officer Desmond, this is pretty detailed, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that this drawing itself contains what you would consider relevant evidence, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You'd agree with me that there's personal property on this drawing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Specifically, there's a cat tree label.
In correlation to where the body was laying and the shell casings were located, yes.
Right. And then there's also a dog cage.
Correct.
Okay. And you also have, or Detective Gold, also has the cell phone next to the body, correct?
Correct.
And you'll agree with me that nowhere on this drawing is that straw that you observed.
That's correct.
Do you know when this drawing was drawn?
The drawing was being completed as I was writing down all the evidence log information.
And as you were writing down all the evidence log information, was the straw still there next to the body?
To my knowledge, along with other items that were laying on the floor that we believe were irrelevant to the case.
Okay, and I want to talk about that because you mentioned on direct examination that some of the other items that you viewed as irrelevant to the case were a dog toy.
Correct.
Okay, but sir, to be fair, you've never seen a dog toy used as drug paraphernalia, correct?
Probably not.
Well, either have or you haven't. Have you seen a dog toy
I've
used as
seen a
drug
lot of
paraphernalia?
strange and crazy things, so the possibility is there.
Okay, but there was nothing about this particular dog toy that made you think it was drug paraphernalia.
Not at that time, no, I did not.
Overruled.
Now, you mentioned on direct examination that you didn't personally give any of the personal effects back to the family?
I did not.
Okay. So you didn't have anything to do with the evidence receipt in this case?
I did not.
Okay, you haven't seen it then?
I have not.
Now, with regards to the cut drug straw, do you
Objection, Your
know...
Honor.
Overruled. I mean, unless you want to approach about something.
With regard to the cut drug straw...
Okay, all right. Now I understand where you're going. Yes, sustained. You're not calling it, it is a cut straw, and that is what you testified to.
Okay. With regard to the cut straw, can you tell the jury what happened to it?
I believe it was left there. It was irrelevant to what we needed to collect at the time based on the knowledge that we had.
Okay. So you believe that that was still left there at the scene that night?
Yes.
Okay. You don't believe it was thrown away?
We had no reason to throw it away.
I'm not saying you had a reason. You don't believe that it was thrown away?
I can say that I did not throw it away.
Okay. Did you see anyone touch that straw?
It might have got bumped when the body was being investigated by Harry Campbell, but to my knowledge, it wasn't moved from the location.
Okay. So to your knowledge, though, it wasn't fingerprinted
No.
and it wasn't sent to BCI?
No.
Okay. And wasn't kept in the custody of the Massillon Police Department?
No.
I want to talk about what you knew on the way to this scene, okay?
Yes.
You testified that you met Detective Golke at the Massillon Police Department, right?
Correct.
Did you ride with him to the scene?
I did.
Okay. Did you listen to the 911 call made in this case on the way to the scene?
Did not.
You did not?
Did not.
Okay. Do you know if Detective Golicky listened to that in the car while you were on the way to the scene?
He did not in the car, he didn't.
Okay. Because if he would have listened to it in the car, you probably would have heard it?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Now, when you were back at the station at the Madison Police Department, no one mentioned to you anything about some statements being made about Colleen was attacked by her husband?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Rephrase.
Okay. Did you have any knowledge of any statements regarding anything about the case before you got on scene?
From other officers, yes.
Okay. From Officer Meyer, I believe? Sergeant Meyer?
Sergeant Meyer.
Okay. What were you aware of from Sergeant Meyer?
Objection, Your Honor.
As to specific statements sustained, you can rephrase.
So it's your testimony that you had no idea prior to arriving on scene, whether from statements or anything that you had heard, that you might need to consider evidence of self-defense when you got on scene?
No.
Okay. Now, when you got on scene, I believe your testimony was that you immediately began filling out those evidence bags. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when you filled out, in all of those evidence bags that you went over on your direct testimony, those were all filled out at 0200 hours, is that right?
Not filled out at 0200 hours. Collected.
Okay, so all the evidence.
Approximately 0200 hours.
Okay, so all the evidence was collected at 0200 hours.
It was one progress. It started and then we were done relatively rapidly because all of those envelopes were completed already. And that's why there's a delay with the collection of the Hornady rounds, because they were located later at a different location.
Right, you said you found those in the garage, right?
Correct.
Now I want to talk about the bullets, or in particular the shell casings. Now the shell casings themselves, they were never fingerprinted?
I can't answer that. You have to ask Detective Gopi. They were sent out to BCNI.
Okay, but to your knowledge, you don't know if they were fingerprinted?
I don't know.
Okay. And with regard to the Hornady bullets that you found in the garage, to your knowledge, those were never fingerprinted?
I cannot answer that.
Now, I believe you pulled prior 911 calls before you, or at some point during your investigation, right?
Correct.
To this residence?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you've been an officer for 10 years. Is it normal for you in a incident involving violence in a home to inquire as to alcohol use that night or drug use that night?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, sir. You've been an officer for 10 years, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I would assume it's normal for you when you're responding to the scene of maybe a domestic incident to inquire about alcohol or drug use that night.
One of many factors that we may review, yes.
Right, because that would be relevant, right?
Potentially.
Okay. Potentially, right?
Correct.
Because fair to say, when you get on the scene, you don't know all the details when you get there.
Do not.
Okay. And in your experience, the reason why you ask those questions is because drugs and alcohol sometimes go hand in hand with violence, right?
Yes.
Especially drugs.
Both.
And your understanding, you found this cut straw next to Rob's body, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you knew that drug use can go hand in hand with violence, and this piece of evidence was not observed, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Counsel approach one last time. go ahead. You can continue, Mr. Faulkner.
Officer Davisman, based on your investigation, you don't know the shot sequence in this case, right?
Do not.
Okay. And you also can't say that there was an argument prior to the shooting, right?
I cannot.
Okay. And you also can't say that Rob didn't lunge at Colleen before she shot him, can you?
That's correct.
Because the truth is, you don't know what happened in that house that night, correct?
I know that someone was shot.
But that's all you know, right?
That's correct.
You don't know the circumstances.
Correct.
Have a brief moment, Your Honor.
You may.
No further question, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Officer Davisman, you were just asked about whether you know the circumstances of this particular event, correct?
Correct.
Now, as an officer, you were not in the position to observe the shooting.
No.
All right. And as an officer, what is your duty after an incident happens when you go to a particular scene? What are you doing? What are you looking for?
We begin to investigate the crime scene. We're looking for answers, anything that would tell us what had occurred during that incident prior to our arrival, because we obviously respond after incidents occur.
All right. Police are reactionary agencies, correct?
Correct.
All right. So you've already testified here today that you took a bunch of different steps and looked at a bunch of different things, correct?
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading.
Sustained. Rephrase.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, you've testified as to your participation in this particular scene, correct?
Correct.
Your Honor. Leading.
Overruled.
Correct.
And have you testified today as the things that you've done?
Yes.
Now, you were asked a few specific questions about some items. Specifically, I believe was mentioned, you were asked whether or not you knew the timing of the dog gate being placed in a particular position. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
Do you recall whether or not that particular item was documented in any way?
Through photographs.
And I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 3K. What does that photograph appear to be?
The dog gate itself.
And is that the condition in which you observed the dog gate upon your arrival?
Yes.
And is there any evidence immediately surrounding or in close proximity to this dog gate that you can observe in this particular photograph?
The shell casings.
All right, could you please circle those items, please? And that is where you found the shell casings in relation to this particular gate?
Correct.
Now, I believe you had also been asked about photographs in the hallway, correct?
Correct.
Officer, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 3J. And officer, can you tell us what that exhibit shows?
That's the hallway leading to the body and also the walls and the structure of the walls along with what is on the walls.
All right, and are there any items that are on that particular, or any of the walls that you can see here in this particular photograph?
Yes.
And what can you see on the walls in this particular photograph?
There's a picture of flowers on the wall to the left and to the right of the hallway. There's also pictures just past the light switch.
Okay, and can you just circle to make it clear which items you're talking about? Thank you, sir. Officer, I also believe you previously testified, you were asked about whether there was tables or any other types of items like that in this particular area. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 3O. Looking at State's Exhibit 3O, what does that photograph show?
It shows the stand that has multiple items on it, papers, belongings.
And was that the stand you were referring to?
Correct.
All right, and I believe you had indicated you observed that particular stand.
Yes.
Was there any items that appeared to be disturbed, knocked over in any way on that stand?
No.
And can you please circle the stand you're referring to in this particular photograph? Thank you. You were asked quite a few questions about the straw, correct?
Correct.
We've already covered that it was not listed on the inventory sheet or collected, correct?
Correct.
In the items that we have gone through today, including photographs, was there any documentation of that straw?
It was photographs.
Okay. So the item was documented in some capacity that evening?
Yes.
You were also asked, officer, with regards to who may have been at the scene prior to your arrival. Is that correct?
The number of people, correct.
Okay. And, officer, you indicated you were a patrol officer.
Yes.
And as a patrol officer, would you normally be the first person to arrive at any type of crime scene?
I would.
Have you been called to a crime scene before in which a detective may later have been called out to do a search warrant or investigation such as in this matter?
Yes, I have.
And when you are a patrol officer in that type of situation, what are your duties as a patrol officer when you first arrive at scene?
You're going to first initially clear the scene and make sure everything is safe in regards to what type of crime it is. Obviously, this would be a crime scene that's kind of elevated. So once that is done and the scene is safe, you would determine if you would need assistance through detective or otherwise, and then you would secure the scene if needed.
And what do you mean by secure the scene?
Securing the scene you would ultimately start a log, and then the limitations of who was in there would be limited to those that needed to be in there and would likely be documented.
I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 12. Officer, if you can look at State's Exhibit 12 and tell me what that appears to be.
This is a written statement form that has names of individuals that entered the residence on that evening.
Okay, and in looking at that particular document, does it give any times?
It does give times that those individuals entered the residence.
And in looking at that particular document, who does it note is first to arrive at scene?
In general, it has midnight shift because they're responding to a traumatic scene.
And what time is that?
I believe that's 23:10. It's hole punched, so I can't see the time. Above it is 23:10. If that correlates with the actual arrival time.
And officer, would the patrol officers who first responded to the scene be in the best position to answer the questions as to who may have arrived first and who is in the residence?
Correct.
And after patrol, who is the next individuals that were documented as being in the residence prior to your arrival?
It would have been rescue, Massillon Fire Department.
Okay. And what time did they arrive?
Approximately, I can't answer that. I'm not sure based on what I'm seeing.
Okay. Who responded after Massillon Fire?
That would be Harry Campbell.
And here, Mr. Campbell's with the coroner's office?
Correct.
And what time did he arrive?
9 minutes after 1 o'clock.
And
I believe
who-
that's what that says.
Okay. And then after Mr. Campbell?
Would have been Detective Golke and I.
Okay. Now, officer, have you participated in other search warrants prior to this particular evening?
In my career
Yes.
or that day?
In your
Yes.
career?
Yes.
And when items are being collected for a search warrant, are all items contained in a residence gathered and stored away?
If they're relevant to the crime that we're looking for, yes.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Obviously, you have an entire residence here.
Correct?
Was the dog gate taken into evidence?
No.
Cat tree?
No.
Any of the documents we've seen on the tables?
No.
Furniture?
No.
All right, so fair to say at a crime scene, not everything is collected.
Objection, Your Honor, meeting.
Overrule.
Correct.
And you were also asked with regards to whether anything was thrown away, correct?
Correct.
After you have completed your gathering of evidence during a search warrant, what do you do?
After we're done, anything that is irrelevant to what we believe is the crime scene is left the way it was found. Detective Golke and I were the last to leave the residence, and we secured the home.
All right, so everything remains in that location and you leave?
Correct.
Okay. Now, once the evidence is gathered, is that home open to use by any other individuals after it's secured?
It was no longer deemed in our custody or under investigation, so yes.
Okay. And when you are finishing at a scene with a search warrant, do you clean up the house?
No.
Do you throw any of the items and effects that you may have seen in that residence away?
The only thing I may throw away is the gloves that I'm wearing.
Okay. Any items that may have been in the house prior to your arrival?
No.
And officer, you again have been asked about determination of what may have occurred prior to your arrival in your investigation between the defendant and Mr. McKernan, correct?
Correct.
In the time that you were there, did you see any evidence of a physical struggle?
No, I did not.
Other than in the area immediately surrounding the body, did you see any blood spatter, blood droplets, anything like that throughout the house?
No.
You may.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. All right, Officer Dadisman, you recognize this, don't you? This is what you just talked about on redirect, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and for the record, this is Defendant's Exhibit L, marked for identification purposes.
And the defendant's Exhibit L is the same document as State's Exhibit 12.
12, yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned that it's important to keep a list of the people that are on scene so that you can possibly track them down, see if any evidence was disturbed, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, we can agree on here that the only names listed are Harry Campbell, right?
Correct.
Your name,
Correct.
and Detective Golke, right?
Along with a unit number on there.
Okay, do you know whose unit number that is?
93.
Oh, do you know whose unit number that is?
That would be Sergeant Rogers.
Okay, so Sergeant Rogers. Now, with regard to the rescue unit, which appeared at first, correct?
Yes.
Does this list indicate anywhere how many of those personnel were there on scene?
Their rescue unit 218 alone will indicate how many of them were there and in the home itself.
So how many people is that?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Okay. Now, there were some other people there that aren't on this list. Officer Anderson was at the home, right?
Right.
And he's not on this list, is he?
He is under midnight shift, which once again would stand alone as the officers that arrived on scene.
Okay, so how many are in midnight shift?
Can you tell me what day that was? What was the
day of the
day
incident?
of the week?
That off the top of my head, I do not know.
If you know the day of the week, I can tell you.
I know the date.
I'm just going to ask you to clarify the question. Is the question how many are on shift
question
or
is-
how many were there.
Yeah, the question is,
Different.
how many were there on this shift?
If it's a Friday night or Saturday night, there's 8. If it's any other day through the week, there's 7.
Okay, and since we don't know the day of the week, and it doesn't say the day of the week on this sheet, from looking at this sheet, we don't know how many people were there for midnight shift. or
I
for
can't
mid-shift.
answer that.
Okay. Now, it's also your understanding that Sergeant Meyer was on scene, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Where is he encapsulated in this sheet?
Midnight shift.
So he's part of midnight shift.
Correct.
Okay. What about Officer Antonides?
Yes.
He's in midnight shift too?
Yes, at the time of that incident, yes.
Okay. But you don't know how many additional more, correct?
I do not.
Okay. Now, we'd agree that, because again, you said with the straw, with relation to the straw, you said that you deemed it not to be relevant. You said it again on redirect, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, we'd agree to gauge whether something's relevant, you need to know the facts, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. Go ahead.
We're looking for facts, correct.
Okay. And you also don't know the circumstances when you got there.
I only knew what I was told prior to my arrival.
Okay. And again, you were asked about the personal effects that were left at the property. Again, the capturing was left at the property. That wasn't taken into evidence.
No.
Okay. The furniture wasn't taken into evidence.
No.
But again, none of those things have you seen in your police work used as drug paraphernalia.
Once again, I can't directly answer that question because of some of the odd things that I have seen.
Okay.
Have I seen a capture used as paraphernalia? No, I have not.
Okay. Thank you for answering the question, Officer Gadsden. No further questions, Your Honor.
Nothing, Your
Anything
Honor.
further?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, officer. You may step down.
Thank you.
Counsel, just approach on this side off the record, just schedule next. Are you okay, Alana? Okay. Given our late start, this is our normal break time, which is why I was asking, but we got a little late start, so we're going to keep going a little bit longer before we take a break. State may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Officer Antones to the stand.
Raise your right hand for me, please. Someone swear to testify the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Here.
Good morning, officer.
Morning.
Could you please give us your full name and spell your last name for us?
Officer Nicholas Antones, Antonides.
And sir, this being a larger courtroom, if you could make sure to pull those microphones close to you and keep your voice up, that would be appreciative. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And sir, what is your occupation?
Police officer,
And how long have you been a police officer?
just over 5.5 years.
And in which department are you a police officer?
Massillon Police Department.
And prior to becoming a police officer with Massillon, do you have any military experience?
I do.
And what is your military experience?
I've been in the Air Force since 2002.
And what is your rank and what are your duties with the Ohio Air Force National Guard?
I'm a technical sergeant, a weapons specialist on the F-16. Armament?
Armament.
I believe you said on an F-16, is that
Yes,
correct?
fighter jet, F-16 fighter jet.
Okay. If you can keep the words at the end of your sentences up a little bit, that would help.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, officer, I'm going to ask what your duties were as a Massillon police officer back in December of 2014.
I was assigned to the afternoon shift in the patrol division. I was working overtime that night.
All right. And when you say you were working overtime that night, what time would you have finished with your shift?
My afternoon shift ended at 10 p.m. I continued on, and I would have worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Now, were you asked specifically to stay over on the midnight shift for this particular case?
No, I was assigned. It was an overtime shift that I picked up the week before.
Okay. And when you were assigned an overtime shift for a particular date, would you have been considered part of the midnight shift for that particular evening?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when working on, I assume you're a patrol officer?
Yes.
Let's see here. What are your normal, everyday duties as a patrol officer?
Patrolling the city and responding to non-emergency, emergency reports, accidents, assisting citizens in the community.
And so when a call goes out, you're the one that shows up in the cruiser, correct?
Correct.
Now, did you respond to a call on December 31st, 2014 at approximately 11:10 hours to a 1753 Oak Trail, Northeast, Massillon, Starr County, Ohio address?
I did.
And what did you do or see immediately upon arrival at that location?
We was the fourth officer to arrive, and I exited my patrol cruiser, and I saw 3 other officers that arrived before me in the front lawn.
On the front where?
On the front lawn.
And who were those 3 officers?
Sergeant Smith, Sergeant Rogers, and Truman Leon.
And at that point in time, what happened? Strike that. Let me ask you this. What were these 3 officers doing on the front lawn when you arrived?
They were notified dispatch to have whoever was inside the house on 911 to come outside to them.
Okay. And while you were outside, did you witness anybody exit that residence?
Yes.
And tell us what you saw.
Female exited the front door and walked towards the officers.
And do you recall what she was wearing?
It was light colored clothing, long sleeve, long pants. That's what I recall.
Okay. It was a while ago, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And when she came out of the residence, which door did she exit?
The front door.
Any other individuals come out of the residence after her?
No.
Anything come out of the residence after her? Any animals, anything like that?
Not that I recall.
All right. Now, when she came out of the residence, could you describe what she was doing, how she was holding herself, whether or not she had anything?
The officers were giving her commands to obviously put your hands up. It was an unknown situation, and they were reacting to what they had. I believe her hands were about halfway up. She had something in her left or right hand, and she was listening to what the commands that they were giving her.
Okay. So fair to say you observed that she was complying with the orders of the officers, correct?
Correct.
And Did she eventually drop what she had in her hand?
Yes.
And what occurred after she dropped that particular item?
She was placed in cuffs and escorted to a cruiser.
Okay. And that individual that you saw exit the house that morning, do you see her here in the courtroom today?
I do.
And could you please point to her and describe an article of clothing that she is wearing?
She's sitting at the defense table, light-colored scarf.
The record will reflect the identification of the defendant.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, officer, after you see her placed in the cruiser, do you know what happened to the item that she dropped?
I do not.
Okay. And do you know what that item was, or what it appeared to be?
I later found out that it was a cell phone.
A cell phone, okay. Now, after she's secured in the vehicle, what happens next with you and the 3 officers who are on scene?
I met with Sergeant Rogers and Sergeant Smith, and due to the situation, we entered the house in order to make sure everything was safe.
Okay. So who went into the house?
Sergeant Rogers, Sergeant Smith, and myself.
All right. What happened to Officer Leon?
Officer Leon escorted her to the cruiser, and to the best of my knowledge, he posted himself at the front of the door.
Okay. So 3 of you went in, 1 remained outside?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And when you say you went to clear the residence, can you describe to the jury what that entails?
Per the nature of the call, we had unknowns inside the residence, which means that we wanted to go in and make sure that no other people were inside the house. There's not going to be any other threat towards us or anybody else around the area, and to make sure that the scene was secure at that point.
Okay. And do you recall the order that the 3 of you entered into the residence?
I believe I was second, so one of the sergeants was in front of me.
Okay. And when you entered into the residence, did you all enter in at the same time?
Correct.
Where did you enter the residence?
The front door.
Okay. And when you entered into the home, when you first entered, can you describe what you first encountered when you entered into the home?
When I entered, I recognized it as some type of split-level residence. There were stairs going up and stairs going down right when you came in the front door.
Okay. And when clearing a scene, do all the officers follow the same route throughout the residence?
No.
Okay.
Not normally.
Not normally. Okay. And why is that?
Because we have to check. We don't want our backs towards something that's unchecked. So, especially if we can go in multiple, as one comes in, if one goes left, it's training. You go right.
Okay. So whatever direction the first officer would have took, you took the opposite.
Correct.
Okay. And when you entered the residence, you have stairs in front of you. Did you observe anything on the stairwell itself when you entered?
Not that I recall, no.
Okay. Get to the top of the stairs. Did you observe anything at that point in time that caused you to communicate with other officers or pause?
As I was coming up the stairs, right at my eye level at the top of the stairs, I could recognize shell casings.
Okay. And what did you do when you saw those?
I called out to the other officers that there were shell casings on the ground, to use extreme caution and be aware of this.
Okay. Now, how far behind you were you to the sergeant that you believe was right in front of you?
Oh, a foot maybe.
Okay, so immediately behind.
Immediately behind.
Okay. When that officer, did he get up to the top of the stairs and turn a direction prior to you observing these shell casings?
He would have turned left.
Okay. Did you observe any items rolling around? Did you hear any items that may have been moved when he got to the top of the landing and turned left?
No.
Okay. Now, he goes left, correct? Which is where into which rooms was that in the residence?
That would have been the living room.
Okay. And you went right?
me was in a hallway.
Okay. And as you traveled down the hallway, what is at the end of the hallway?
I passed a bathroom on my left, and then I knew that there was 2 rooms at the end of the hallway.
Okay. Do you know what type of rooms they were?
I believe they were bedrooms.
Okay. And did you observe any items as you were traveling further down the hallway after you got to the top of the stairs?
More casings.
Okay. And did you make any further communications to officers with regards to those observations?
I believe I may have called it out again.
Okay.
Due to the situation, just making sure they heard me.
Okay. Was there any acknowledgement of those
Yes.
communications? Okay. Now, officer, when you are going through and securing the scene, are you making any attempts at that point in time with regards to the items that you are seeing on the floor? The casings, are you doing anything in particular with regards to those items?
While I'm clearing?
Yes.
Negative. No, I'm not.
Okay, so you're not,
I'm just being aware of where they are.
okay. Are you touching them in any manner?
No.
Are you moving them in any manner?
No.
All right. At any point in time, you may have accidentally stepped on, kicked, brushed any of the items that you observed.
No.
And officer, have you been at other crime scenes before in which there has been evidence visible upon securing a residence?
Yes.
All right. How many times did you say you've done that in your career?
Multiple, but if I had to take a number, I'd say more than 10.
Okay. And officer, I'm going to show you briefly what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 3A through YY. You can just briefly flip through them. You don't need to go into too much detail. And sir, what do those photographs appear to be?
That's the inside of the residence.
Okay. And I'm going to first put up State's Exhibit 3A.
Unhappy baby outside. Sorry about that, folks.
All right. Officer, State's Exhibit 3A, what is that a photograph of?
That would be the front door.
Okay. And is the front door at the Oak Trail address we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm looking at that photograph. The front door, that's what you would have come in.
Correct.
All right. State's Exhibit 3B. Officer, I believe you testified that you were getting to the top of the staircase when you observed the first casings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Does this photograph show us where you were when you first observed the casings, if you recall?
Well, it probably would have been in this general area, moving up.
Okay. And in this photograph, can you see the casings that you would have observed that night?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So those are the casings you were discussing as you came up the stairs?
Correct.
Okay. C, State's Exhibit 3C. What does that appear to be a photograph of?
That would be the hallway, that coming up the stairs.
Okay. And I believe you testified you took a right.
Correct.
All right. As you were taking the right, you indicated you observed additional casings.
Yes.
All right. Can they be seen in State's Exhibit 3C?
Yes.
And can you circle them for us? And were you aware of those casings prior to traveling in that particular area of the residence?
I was.
And did you make any efforts to avoid moving, touching, kicking, or disturbing them in any way?
I did.
Same with the two that you observed at the top of the stairs. Did you make any efforts to avoid moving or disturbing them in any way?
I did.
Now, you indicated that you were the one that followed down the hallway toward the bedrooms, correct?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 3F. Can you identify this particular photograph and its location in the residence?
It appears to be the hallway
Okay,
that I entered.
that you entered. Okay, so this would have been the direction you traveled, correct?
Correct.
All right, and did you observe casings in this particular area?
I did.
All right, and are they shown in this particular photograph?
They are.
If you could please circle them for me. And officer, during the period of time that you were traveling down this particular area of the hallway, did you make any efforts to avoid touching, moving, bumping any of these particular pieces of evidence?
I did.
Officer, during the sweep of the upstairs residence, did you enter the rooms down the end of the hall?
I did.
And tell us what you do when you enter a room when clearing a residence.
For the most part, it's quick and fast. Get in, clear all the windows on the other, where you can't see. I went onto the other side of the bed. I might have opened a closet,
Okay?
and then deemed that room clear, and then moved to the next.
Okay.
And went through the same process there.
Primary focus of that sweep is for safety, correct?
Correct.
All right. Are you there to document evidence?
No.
All right. During the time, however, that you were in any of those rooms, did you observe anything that drew your attention to it that you believe may have been related to this particular case?
No.
Okay. At any time during the sweep, did you discover or observe any animals? Cats, dogs, anything?
I did not.
Okay. From the time you entered the residence, did you see any animals?
No.
When you completed your sweep down the end of the hall, where did you go?
Coming back,
Yes.
I went right back the same way I came.
Okay, so back to the stairway.
Yes.
Did you enter into the kitchen area or the living dining room area?
The living room area is where I entered first.
Okay. And during your time in those particular areas of the home, did you observe any animals?
No, I did not.
Okay. And any time during the protective sweep and you returning back to that main living area, did you see anything that indicated to you that there had been a physical altercation or struggle in the residence outside body, the gun, and the casings we've talked about?
No, I did not.
Once the residence had been secured, what was the next step?
Sergeant Smith had me stand near the body and do an immediate quick sketch of everything I saw.
Okay. And when you say stand at the body, where were you located?
I would be to the right of the body's head, so about 2 feet back, standing still.
Okay. And what was the purpose of you being at that location?
It was more or less to do an initial securing of the evidence without really having to touch it, make sure I had complete observation of where everything was and that nobody would kick or step on, and I could be observing that.
Okay. And so as you're standing close to the body at the head area, are you observing the areas that you did not do the protective sweep of?
Such as like the living room that I did not do? Yes.
Okay. And while you're sitting, I should say standing, in that living room, dining room area, you indicate you're looking for anything else that may be evidence, correct?
Correct.
And what do you observe when you're in that particular area?
From standing still, I could see shell casings closer to where the body was, and then there was a firearm to the back side of me, back right side of me.
Do you recall whether or not you observed the firearm?
I saw the firearm in
Okay.
its location.
And where was it in relation to where you were?
It would have been about 2 feet behind me to the right, approximately. I know it was behind me to the right.
And how long did you remain at that particular location observing these particular pieces of evidence, the hallway, etc., prior to you leaving?
I would say no more than 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. And when was it that you would have left?
This would have been after the fire department came in, and I believe Detective Golke and Truman Dasman might have arrived,
Okay.
and then I was relieved, and I went outside.
Okay. Now, prior to you being relieved of that particular position and going outside, during your time in that particular room, did you observe any officers, move any of the items you initially observed at that residence that evening?
I did not.
Okay. When the EMTs arrived, were any efforts made to inform the EMTs of any evidence in their location in the residence?
There was.
Okay. And do you recall who may have made or shared that information with them?
I believe it was Sergeant Smith.
Okay. And did you observe their entire interaction at the residence?
Yes.
And do you recall how many EMTs arrived?
3, I believe. 3.
3. Okay. And do you recall how long approximately they were there?
Long enough for them to hook up their machine to get a scan. I'm not sure the terminology.
Okay.
But it was long enough for them to come in, check vital signs, and exit.
Okay.
So,
At any time, did you see them move the body in any way?
no.
My understanding is, did they lift a shirt?
I believe, yeah, they would have lifted the shirt in order to attach the machine that they had.
Okay. Considering you had seen the position of the body prior to the EMTs lifting that shirt, did the body appear to have moved during any of their interactions with it?
Not that I recall, no.
Okay. And after the EMTs had made their entrance and exit, did there appear to be any alterations in locations or movement of any of the physical evidence that you had identified while sweeping the residence and standing at that location?
No, it was not.
And did you observe any officers move anything, touch anything prior to the detectives coming and gathering?
No.
Officer, while you were standing in the living dining room area, did you observe any indications of a struggle?
It was struggle?
Yes.
No, not at all.
Objection, Your Honor, ask and answer.
Overrule.
In sweeping the residence, did you find blood in any other areas of the residence other than right around the body?
Not that I noticed.
Okay. At some point in time, after you left the head of the body and went outside, were you asked to look for any additional items inside the residence?
Once we were complete outside, I re-entered and asked if there was any assistance needed. At that point, I helped with a search of the residence and located an item in the garage.
Okay, and which item was it that you located in the garage?
Box of ammunition.
Okay, and who did you give that item to?
I pointed it out to Detective Golke.
Okay, so you didn't pick it up, carry it, anything like that?
I notified him what I located and got him aware of it.
Okay, and when you referred to where you found it, can you describe how you would have gotten to that location?
There's I don't recall if the door was on the top of the stairs leading down or it was at the bottom of the stairs, but there was a door that led into the garage, which would have been, if you're at the front door, it would have been to the right.
Okay, so looking at the same front door, there would have either been a door in stairs or stairs in a door.
Correct.
Okay, you just don't recall which at this time.
Correct.
All right. And while you traversed that area, going down those stairs through a door and into the downstairs garage area, do you recall observing any type of shoes or boots lying in the stairwell at any time?
No, not that I recall.
Okay. Prior to getting into the garage area, did you observe any animals?
Not that I recall. No, there wasn't. Not before I get into the garage.
Okay. So you get into the garage. Do you observe animals at that time?
There was a dog.
Okay. You recall one dog?
One dog.
Okay. You don't recall more than one?
No, I do not.
All right. And heading down those stairs, through that door and into the garage, did you observe any blood, damage, or any indication of any struggle or incident that had occurred in that lower stairwell or the garage area?
No, I did not.
Officer, when you first entered the residence to clear the scene, can you describe for us what the lighting conditions were like?
I believe the lights were on.
Okay. Did anyone have to turn on any lights?
I didn't, and I don't recall anybody else doing the same.
Okay. Were there any areas you were not able to clearly see with the lighting conditions as they were when you first entered?
No, everything was fairly lit.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hiltner.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, one more time, how do I say your last name?
Antones.
Antones, okay, thank you. My name is Max Hilton and I represent Colleen McKernan, okay? So if any of the questions I ask you are unclear, just ask me to rephrase and I will, all right?
Okay.
All right. Now, when you arrived at the scene, there were already other officers there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you actually saw Colleen come out of the house, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you said her hands were halfway up?
As I recall, I was still approaching.
Okay. But you didn't see a gun in her hand, right?
I saw something in her hand. I didn't know what it was at that point.
Okay. But you didn't see her go back into the house,
No.
correct? Okay. And when you did go into the house, you saw that the gun was in the house?
Correct.
So it's fair to assume that the gun was left in the house, correct?
That's fair to assume, yes.
Okay. Now, when she came out of the house, Colleen, she wasn't running from the police, fair to say?
That's fair to say, yes.
Okay. And she complied with the police when she came out?
Yes.
Now, when you looked at her that night, you believe she was shook up?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
You can go ahead and answer. You believed when you, I'll rephrase. You believed she was shook up when you looked at Colleen, right?
When I observed the female exit the residence, not knowing what was going on, I observed a female that appeared, from my experience, to have been involved in some type of situation that shook her up.
Okay. So when you looked at her, she appeared to be shook up?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that she appeared to have been in an intense situation?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when we talked about earlier that day, you were also working overtime, right? On the holiday?
Yes.
Okay. You had already worked the 2 to 10 shift?
Correct.
And this was several hours after that, correct?
A few, yes.
Okay. What did you do after your 2 to 10 shift? Did you go home?
No, it's continuous.
After 10
2 p.m. to 10 p.m., 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Okay, so you were on 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
It was a 16-hour shift.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's talk about your first duty that night. So you testified that your first duty that night was to clear the residence. It's fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. So when you're clearing the residence, I assume that, again, it's an unknown situation, right? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Sorry, you have to answer out
Aye.
loud.
Okay.
So I'm assuming you have your gun drawn, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And you probably have your eyes up looking for possible threats?
Correct.
Can I approach the witness, Your Honor? For the record, officer, I'm showing you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 3B. And I believe you already went over this.
Yes.
And you recognize this picture, right?
Yes.
And this appears to be in the same condition as when you last saw it.
Yes.
Can I call the sheriff?
Yes. I think it already has been, but go ahead.
Now, you indicated, officer, that you had seen these shell casings as you were on these steps, right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you again circle where the shell casing was that you saw? And can you circle where you were standing?
Had it been somewhere in this area, I would assume.
Okay. And you testified that one of your sergeants was directly in front of you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you indicate on there where he was standing?
Well, he would have been in front of me, so at the moment I saw them, he would have been probably getting ready to turn this way, come across the corner.
Okay, so he was in front of you when you saw those shell casings?
Yes.
Okay. And it's your testimony that you saw those shell casings and that you called out, hey, heads up guys, there's shell casings?
Correct.
Okay. And did they give you an affirmative response back that they heard you and that they recognized that there were shell casings?
I don't recall.
Okay. So there's nothing in their communication back to you assured you that they heard that?
Nothing they said that I would have recalled them saying.
Okay.
I trust that they would have heard me because of my situations we've been in before like that, and I yelled it loud enough.
Okay. Well, there was no nod or anything, right? They were facing the other way?
The first one was, yes.
Okay. So when you got to the top of the steps, well, I guess there was someone in front of you. Which sergeant was that again?
Sergeant Smith.
Sergeant Smith. So when Sergeant Smith got to the top of the steps, he turned left, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then you turned right, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you didn't see every step that Sergeant Smith took left, did you?
No, I did not.
Because again, you were turning right to clear the other part of the house, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you can't tell the jury that Sergeant Smith didn't accidentally kick one of the shell casings.
I would not know that.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about where these shell casings were. These were shell casings. These weren't found embedded in like a thick carpet, were they?
No, they were not.
Okay. They were on a, what you call a hardwood floor?
Correct.
Okay. And it was hard surface?
Yes.
Okay. And let's talk about the shell casings. And the shell casings obviously were empty. They were just the casing. Is that a yes?
Yes.
So they're pretty light.
Yes.
They're hollow.
Yes.
They're round.
Yes.
Okay. They could roll on a hardwood floor.
They could.
Now you mentioned that you saw one dog on the scene, right?
Later on I did, yes. Not initially.
Okay, not initially. Later on. Okay. So your second duty that night was to help preserve evidence. That's fair to say?
That's fair to say, yes.
And that's after you completed your first duty of securing the scene. Is that a yes?
Yes.
I'll move this if this is changing colors on you. And specifically, it was Sergeant Smith that instructed you to stand over the body, correct?
Stand near the body.
Stand near the body.
Yes.
And make sure that any evidence was preserved, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that no evidence was disturbed.
Correct.
Now, and you just said on your direct testimony that that especially applied to evidence next to the body, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you made a sketch of your impressions that you saw that night, right?
I did, an initial sketch, yes.
An initial sketch, yeah. And that was to document just everything that you saw, right?
Correct.
As it sat there.
Correct.
And this sketch, did it include items around the body?
The sketch I did was shell casing placement, where the shell casings were, what I observed,
Okay.
and where the firearm was. That was all I remember recalling sketching.
Okay. So you didn't sketch, well, let's talk about what you observed. You observed a cell phone next to the body?
If it was on the sketch, I would have observed it then. I don't recall. I recall seeing the shell casings, the body, where the firearm was.
Okay. Well, it'd help if we had the sketch. Do you have the sketch with you?
I believe the prosecution might have a sketch. I'm not sure.
The sketch that you made?
Sketch that I made.
Okay. Can we approach you on?
Can.
Okay, officer, so it's fair to say that you do not have that sketch that you made, correct?
I do not have that on me at this very moment.
Okay, but in your possessions at all?
I might. I hold on my notepads from past cases.
Okay, so you don't know if you have it or if you gave it to the state?
I don't recall.
Now, your observation as you're looking at the body, did you observe a straw?
I did not, no.
You did not observe a...
Not while I'm standing there, body. I don't recall that.
At any point. So you were standing over this, you were standing over the body for, I believe what you said was 15 to 20 minutes, right?
Correct.
And that was your sole job for that 15 to 20 minutes, was to stand there and to look at the evidence in or around the body, right?
It was more or less the sergeant advised me about the shell casings because that was, at that point, they were scattered and we didn't want that disturbed. So my focus was not so much right next to them, which it was, but also down the hallway. So that when people came up the stairs, such as fire department or anything else before that, to advise them what was going on.
Okay, but I just want to clarify. One of the first questions I asked you is that the sergeant asked you to preserve any evidence, correct?
Preserving any evidence. I was standing there, observing and making sure nobody disturbed any evidence.
Okay. One moment here. Can I approach the witness, Your Honor? Officer, I'm showing you what's been previously marked for identification purposes as Defense Exhibit III.
Okay.
Do you recognize this scene here?
I did.
Okay, and you recognize this because this is the scene that you were looking at as you stood over the body, correct?
Correct. Well, this would have been after the fire department moved his shirt.
Okay, but other than the shirt movement, everything else is where it was?
I recall the body.
Okay. Where's your public now? Okay. So, officer, you do not recall seeing a round, white, cylindrical object next to the body?
I may have recalled it when I was there. However, to this day, I don't remember seeing and recognizing that it's sitting right there.
But you agree with me?
I'm sure I saw it.
Okay, and I know it's been a long time, so I'm not faulting you for that. And that's why it would help if we had your sketch. And do you believe you would have seen this if you were standing directly over the body?
I probably would have observed it.
Objection, Your Honor. Okay. I think that we have hashed this out about him being there and him not recalling seeing it, and I think it's speculative to say, do you believe you would have seen it? He's already said if he was there, he would have seen it. Let's move on.
Move on, Your Honor. Now, during the 15 to 20 minutes that you were standing there, watching all the evidence, you didn't see anyone disturb anything while you were standing there?
I did not.
Okay. Now, as to the dog that you mentioned was in the downstairs of the house.
In the garage.
He was in the garage. The dog was in the garage?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know who put the dog in the garage?
I do not.
Was there just one dog in the garage?
Yes.
Okay. You're not aware of a second dog?
I'm not.
Okay. Anywhere else in the residence?
Yeah, I did not observe a second dog in the residence.
Okay. What about a cat?
I did not observe another animal inside the residence outside the dog that we saw in the garage.
Okay. Now, when you were upstairs, standing there for the 15 to 20 minutes, taking a good look and observing everything up there, did you observe a dog cage?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Do you recall observing a dog toy?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Do you recall observing a cat tree?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Any further?
Any redirect?
Very briefly, Your Honor. Officer, you referred to, you would have made a sketch in notepad?
In the note, a regular dollar notepad that we carry on shift to take notes from accidents or...
Do you happen to have one with you right now? So we can give an idea of...
I do not.
You took it off, okay. And I believe you indicated that you use those notepads for a particular purpose.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you. What do you use them for?
Well, it's as patrolman or any law enforcement job, you use it to take notes. You respond, anything. It's available for get to an accident. You take everybody's information so that you can go back and refer to it for reports or anything and such.
And you indicated you refer to them for your own personal memory.
Correct.
All right. And you referred to them when you indicated reports. Do you have the ability while on scene to create an official police report?
No.
All right. When in your shift would you be creating that type of document?
When you return to the station.
Okay. So sometimes you would do multiple incidents prior to returning to the station?
Yes.
Okay. And in this particular purpose, this notepad that you used and draw this little sketch, did you incorporate that sketch into any official police supplement or document that you would have created by pulling it out, attaching it, or submitting it as evidence in any way?
I don't believe so. They might have noted it in my supplement. However, I don't believe pulling it out and attaching it in any way.
Okay.
Due to the fact that detectives were there and they were doing their sketch.
Okay, and that was actually my next question. Were you tasked with the responsibility of documenting via sketch the scene that evening?
No.
Okay. And I believe you indicated the detectives were going to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. One more. Nothing further, thank you.
Any recross?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Officer, you indicated that you have this notebook so that you can take notes, right?
Correct.
Okay. So that you can refer to later when you form a police report.
Correct.
Okay. Now, in this situation, what you're talking about was a sketch, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so that sketch you drew so that you could refer to later in a police report.
The purpose of me doing the sketch was that if there was anything that was disturbed, such as the fire department coming in and tripping and falling and hitting something, I could say and refer back for the detectives that this is where it was. It was a security blanket, if you will, in case something happened, until detectives could get there and process the scene.
Absolutely. So you make that sketch so that other people can rely on it, right?
It was an order from my sergeant to do in case something happened.
Okay. And as you said, that was a security blanket, that sketch.
Correct. That's what I said.
Okay. And we don't have that security blanket, do it?
Objection, Your Honor. Overruled.
Not here right now, no.
Okay. No further questions.
All right. Officer, you may step down. Thank you. And we are going to take our break well past our time that is normally designated for that purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, do not discuss this case among yourselves. Do not discuss it with anyone else. Do not allow anyone to discuss it in your presence. Do not form or express an opinion on the case until it is finally submitted to you. We will take a recess of just about 10 minutes, just give you enough time to go to the bathroom, get something to drink if you need to. And I'll ask that you report back to the jury